Thank you, sir. So, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, good morning, everyone. Actually, Sir has told, so Dr. Ravish sir has told that it's a privilege. Actually, it's a privilege to give this session. So, when Sir asked, I readily accepted to give this session. So this field that we are talking about, neuroscience, and I'll just directly jump into the field. So, Sir has already given an elaborate introduction about me. So thank you, sir. Thank you for that honorary introduction given by one of the eminent persons whom I met in life. So thank you, sir. Thank you. So the field that I have chosen in the prospect of my career, so it has ended up, or it has actually been started with instrumentation, then biomedical. Now I have narrowed it to neuroscience. So neuroscience. So that's where the today's topic. So another important thing is, since I have the varied expertise in both industry as well as in academics, the main agenda of my career I have designed in such a way that, you do a research, you come up with a solution, and that solution should be commercialized. So that's where I'm placing myself in the big ocean of academia. So I wanted to bridge this gap between the academics and the industry. So we do research, we all do research. So what happens to this research? So why do we do a research? We find a problem and we try to provide a solution for that research. And once the solution is ready, most of us stop there. We don't take it to the next level, called commercialization. We feel that commercialization it's something that's important to yeah, I'm not gone to slideshow. Just give me a minute. I'll just give the introduction and then I'll quickly jump into the slideshow. So commercialization is important most of the time. Okay, so let me share the screen. So I hope that everyone can see my slide. Yes, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So I thought I will just give a brief introduction before jumping into the slide, because it immediately starts. It just pops out saying something called neuro instrumentation towards product commercialization. So, how to start and where to start is the question. Because neuro instrumentation, people say it's a neuroscience. People, most of the time, people think that it's only going to be a research oriented kind of field. That's a major no, that's a major wrong ideology that people usually have. So when they study neuroscience, okay, that's going to be a research oriented field. But neuroscience actually is a very, very prominent in giving those applications for people with rehab, starting from rehab to the people with to the people of physicians also. So that's where the neuroscience actually. So people usually have this misbelief. So today I wanted to clarify that. So where I am actually in a point where I connect between the research and product commercialization. So that's where my entire career has been. Okay, so 1 minute. Just quickly change it to, there's a pointer. Yeah, fine, good. So before starting, I thank Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Technology and Dr. Ravi sir for giving this opportunity. I am to introduce myself. I am Dr. R. Dhanush, Assistant Professor. Sir has given the introduction, and I am from Savita Engineering College, Chennai. Okay, so I work as Assistant Professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering. Okay, so what is neuroscience? Okay, so before going into neuro instrumentation, which is the engineering aspect of neuroscience, let us first see what's neuroscience. The study of nervous system. So this nervous system is actually something that's going to give you the control signal for different parts of the body. So this neurosystem mainly comprises of two things. One is central nervous system, actually three things. One is central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomous nervous system. So the central, when you study these things, that field is called neuroscience. Okay. So the central nervous system comprises of brain and spinal cord, and you can see all these nerves. They comprise and they reach various different extremities of the body. They are called peripheral nervous system, and this peripheral nervous system actually controls the muscles of various different parts of the body. But there are also involuntary muscles, right? Heart, kidneys, liver, stomach, GI tract, everything. Those important involuntary muscles which doesn't come under volition. So they are controlled by a certain system called autonomous nervous system. So these are the nervous systems that's in the human body, and this science that actually enables you to study the functional aspect, the structural aspect, the functional aspect of neuroscience, and their interpretations and their implications is termed as neuroscience. And this neuroscience is divided into four major broad categories. One is computational, behavioral, cognitive, cellular, and molecular. So computational is in certain computational neuroscience is a phenomenon. It's a field where mostly that involves simulations, simulations of existing data and the prediction of the outcome of an phenomenon that comes under computational neuroscience. Behavioral neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience actually deals with at the level of understanding, at the level of mostly in the frontal area of the brain where decisions take place. How does an logic happens, and what's the interpretations of those logic, and how this neuroscience or how this neural systems, neural substrates enable to perform this the cognitive cognition of an application that talks so that science is called cognitive neuroscience. And at the level of cellular and molecular comes the cellular neuroscience, cellular or molecular neuroscience. So my field is predominantly behavioral neuroscience, or to put it in other words, called motor neuroscience, or it's a motor aspect of the body. So when I say behavioral neuroscience, so behavioral neuroscience as implications as their direct manifestation into actions, and these actions into movements. So what are these actions and movements? So these range as an entire uh, a range of movements that start from that starts from reaching, holding, and complicated movements like Bharatanatyam dancers. So these are small movements. These small movements are all combined together. Small actions are all combined together to form a major movement. So what are this major movement? It can be a classical Bharatanatyam dancer. And these movements, so these movements and actions and behaviors were first coined, and first this the term called neuroscience was coined by the father, the one who's called as the father of neuroscience, called Sherrington. Okay, so this is the person who first coined this term called neuroscience. And yeah, any issues? Okay, okay, fine. So so it is coined by so this term was coined by the person called Sherrington. He's called the father of neuroscience, and this I am working in this field called behavioral neuroscience. So what I do is I try to I actually understand the movements. Okay, so these movements are combination or the sequences of various different actions, and these actions are combined to form meaningful movements, and these movements vary from day-to-day tasks, from reaching a uh, reaching a cup of coffee, holding the cup of coffee, to complicated movements like elite athletes and dancers such as Bharatanatyam dancers. So if you see in the Bharatanatyam dances, they what they do convey a scene in an epic, right? And this scene or epic is conveyed in a combination of movements, combination of different postures. Okay, so these postures tells you what scene is actually being enacted by these elite dancers. Okay, and so basically what are these complicated postures or movements? They are combination of various different actions, and these actions are outcomes of a behavior. So behavior is an outcome of central nervous system. So when I say behavior, it's so how do an object, so based on my my ideology, what I claim is movement is life, and life is movement. That's where from the I have this as a important ideology. So whenever a system is moving, that system is alive. If the system is not moving, that is non-alive. So what actually differentiates living and non-living? It's the movements. And what are these movements? These are combination of various different actions. Okay, and where these actions are actually getting originated. So these actions are actually getting originated in an area called area 4 and area 6, that is premotor cortex and subliminary motor cortex area. Okay, so there are like premotor cortex and sensory motor cortex. Okay, so one is actually provides the motor signals, another one is sensory signals. Okay, so what are the sensory signals? These signals are actually collected from various different parts of the body, and it's given to this sense the somatosensory area. And once, for example, so this is the cup, right? So this is a, let's say this is an odd cup, and I'm going to so my brain has initiated volition signal to go and reach this cup so that I can drink it, right? But what happens the moment I go and touch it, right? So there is a there is a sensation of pain because it is so hot. So what happens immediately, the sensations would ask this sensations would go to the central nervous system. So let's be very clear, sensation will go to the central nervous system. I'm not telling you where. The sensations would go to the central nervous system, and from the central nervous system, the motor action of retrieving it from the glass takes place. So it is so hot, I cannot hold it, so I produce a action. Okay. Now let me say what is the central nervous system. So central nervous system is comprised of both spinal cord and brain. But when there is a reflex action, so when there is a quick action, for example, this system is very hot, this cup is very hot, I cannot hold it. So what I will be doing, I'm quickly taking my hand off it, right? So what happens? So this action is very quick. It happens at the level of millisecond. Response time is at the level of milliseconds. Okay, you should be very clear. Whenever the voluntary action takes place, it's at the level of seconds. Okay, so now I'm going to hold a hot vessel. That vessel is very hot. I have to retrieve my hand, else my hand will get burnt, right? So that is not that's not acceptable for human being. That burning can even be fatal. So what I do, I'm trying to reach it. Immediately, it's very hot. And so what I told you, this area is sensory area, and this is motor area. So usually, what happens? The sensations reach here, and immediately the corresponding motor actions would be actually what happens. Okay, I'm reaching it. If it is hot, then the processing takes place. Then I'm going to take my hand off the vessel, right? But you don't have that time. You don't have that much of time because the vessel is so hot, your hand will get burnt. So what happens? The spinal cord comes into play. So spinal cord spinal cord immediately intervenes. Okay, this is a very hot vessel. If it's not taken, if that action is not produced in milliseconds duration, what happens? My hand is going to get burned. So it intervenes. The brain itself. The spinal cord intervenes the brain itself. So the sensation reaches the spinal cord, and spinal cord immediately sends a reflex action, trying to remove the hand from the hot vessel. Okay. And what happens is one of the wonderful things that how they work as a team, the central nervous system, spinal cord, it sends a motor copy and a sensation copy to the brain, telling that, you know what it tells to the brain? Tells that, see, I have taken this decision without your notice. That's because this vessel is very hot, and these are the proofs. These are the evidences of what has happened. This is the copy of the motor action. This is the copy of the sensations that have taken place. That's the reason when the reflex action as such takes place. This kind of a reflex action takes place in day-to-day activity, in all our day-to-day activity. When we are cooking, when we are doing something, we are trying to reach that hot vessel, and we retrieve your hand, and after certain period in time, after 1 or 2 seconds, you come to know, oh, after that period only you come to know, okay, this vessel is hot, because that's when the information from the spinal cord has reached the brain. That's how sophisticated, how beautiful is our central nervous system. So this also shows how they work in concurrence with each other, in parallel with each other, without any conflict. So spinal cord comes in the way to protect, and it immediately tells the brain, it intimates the brain that sorry, that I have to take this decision without your notice, because this is important. It might be even a life thing. So the brain, that's the reason after you do such a task, you come to know after a period in time, okay, this is why we made that action. While doing the action, that is in the millisecond time, you won't be in a position to actually know what has happened. But after a period in time, you come to know, because that's when data has reached the brain. So this is how beautiful is our neuroscience. That's one of the reasons I took this science as my research topic. Okay, I told you the task. So what was the task previously? Reaching to the coffee. The task ranges from anything, reaching to the tip of the nose, reaching to day-to-day activities like stitching, writing, everything. So whatever tasks that involve movement, whatever so whenever a movement comes, that's called a motor task. Okay, so task is some so what is a task? A task is an activity that I need to do in order to achieve a goal. Okay, so here what is my goal? My goal is, I have a itchy nose, so I have to scratch it, so I have to reach to that nose so that I can scratch it, so it becomes a motor task. Okay, so this is how the entire system works. Such how so we saw reflex action in the previous slide. This slide, let's see how volition, that voluntary movements takes place. Okay, let's say that I want to walk from one point to another. Okay, and so I want to walk on a floor. Okay, so there is one stage called planning stage. So what I do, I look in the corridor, and I see, okay, the floor is good. Is the floor going to be slippery? Is the floor is going to be watery? So all those things I'm actually thinking. Okay, so so when I'm standing erect, my body, I'm getting feedback from the eyes. So from occipital lobe, I'm going to get an information from cerebellum. So cerebellum is another beautiful unit of the brain that coordinates various motor activities, controls and coordinates various different motor activities. So they become so it is an erect correction facility of the brain is cerebellum. So what it does is it gives you the entire sensory inputs of the entire body. And another quick fact is that there is more number of neurons in cerebellum. It's like in the folds of hundreds of thousand x times greater when it compared to the entire brain itself. So cerebellum is so much sophisticated. Why is that? Because it corrects the error of the movements. That's why it can control and coordinate various different parts. And what happens is it also gives the informations from various different. It takes the informations from various different parts, and it sees, okay, the body is erect, the foot is standing. Standing correctly without any slippage, and all these planning stages takes place. So decision, what is the decision? So I want to walk, I want to reach to a specific point in the corridor. So that is the decision that takes place in the frontal brain. That's going to take place in the frontal lobes. Okay, so am I going to run, am I going to walk? All these things are going to be taken in the decision. It's going to go to the motor association area, the area 6. And then from there, these association, so I've taken a decision, right? So what I need to do is I need to intimate this entity is called cerebellum. I told you cerebellum is the error correcting facility, and it has to go to basal nuclei. What is the basal nuclei? It's the motor initiation or movement initiation facility. So I need to initiate the movement, right, before doing. So I need to tell the basal nuclei saying that please secrete dopamine so that the movement can be initiated. And cerebellum, while initiating, and it sees the existing sensory perception of the body, and it says, okay, is there an error? If there is an error, it immediately corrects. So what happens after it corrects? It gives to the primary motor area. So association area, primary motor area, and basal nuclei all gives the inputs to the primary motor cortex, that is area 4, the M1 region. And then from there it gets pointed out to the spinal neurons and the upper motor neurons. These the neurons, so from the cortex to the spinal cord, the upper motor neurons, and from the upper motor neurons there are the spinal neurons, and from the spinal neuron it goes to lower motor neurons, and from the lower motor neurons it goes to my foot, where the flexion of the foot muscle, the gastrocnemius soleus takes place, making me to flex my knee joint and the ankle joint to make a movement in the forward direction. When I'm doing that, all my lats muscles, all my thorax muscles are intact, so that I walk erectly, carefully to reach to that point. So this is how the entire motor task takes place. It can be even a simple motor task to a very complex motor task such as the Bharatanatyam dancing, or a simple motor task such as walking, or a complex motor task such as dancing. All this for all these motor tasks, the entire parts are actually triggering and functioning in a successive, sequential, as well as concurrently to achieve the task goal. So what was the task goal in the previous scenario? I want to reach a point in a floor, in a corridor, without falling, in a quite appropriate way for me. Okay, that's what I wanted. Okay, and so entire this field that comprises of all this studying of how the planning is planning stage, execution stage, and motor stage, sensory stage, and how this movement is even formed. Okay, so when I say no, the movements are formed, the movements can be formed at the elemental stage, like actions. So first, there's a flexion of ankle joints, flexion of ankle knee joint, ankle joint, then plantar flexion. So all these are actually, they are sequenced, they are actually tailored in such a way to make you flex a feet in a forward direction, to make a stance in the forward direction, so that to move in the horizontal floor without falling. Okay, so this science that tells us about how the central nervous system prepares itself in producing a movements, prepares itself, plans itself, executing a movement or giving the movement as an output. This field is called movement neuroscience, and today we will be seeing neural neuroscience. This movement neuroscience is divided into two major classes. One is motor control and motor learning. So motor control. So our movement. So I told you in the previous slide that I'm going to hold a cup of coffee, right? So how am I going to hold the cup of coffee? So how this the movement, how am I going to control it? Okay, because you are actually holding a finite load in your hand, and you are going to take this load, take it close to your lips, and if without burning your lips, you need to drink. So how do you control this action? So you need to place this in a very precise position in the lips, so that you can sip it and enjoy the coffee without burning your tongues, without burning your lips, and so on. So that phenomenon, that field, that tells you all this is motor control. Okay, and what is motor learning? I'm learning. So as a child, I'm actually trying to hold a cup and trying to drink. So what I'm doing, I'm trying initially keeping the cup very quickly to the mouth. My mouth burns. Then I learn. Then I do it n number of times. Practice it. So I do it again and again with appropriate feedback. What is the feedback here? The burning of the lips, burning of the tongue, and so on. So that gives me a feedback. So I do it n number of times. That phenomenon of doing something n number of times with appropriate feedback is called practice, and I do it. So after certain period in time, what I do is with minimal effort and minimal time, I sip the coffee without. And another thing is without slipping the coffee onto my shirt or on myself. I do that. So that is an error. Okay, so and cerebellum is also a seat of supervised learning. So this is supervised learning, and these are the two major things that movement neuroscience comprises of. One is motor control. So how do you control in a controlled fashion? How do you sip a coffee, and how do you learn to? How do you actually learn to perform that motor task is called motor learning. And today we will. This is where my field is actually jotting down or specifically pointed to. So I did my field is motor learning, and when I say motor learning, you have movements. So how do you learn a movement? So that's where motor learning comes. And the famous movements. So movements, when you move from one point to another, that becomes locomotion, right? So a person, Edward Muybridge, the person who actually first showed us that you can even capture these movements. The first legend who showed us that we can even capture the movements, Edward Muybridge, animal locomotion. So what he did, this is one of the famous experiments that he did in his lifetime. This is, he did not only for humans, so he did for across all the so many different animals, horses, so many different people. So what he asked, nothing. So he asked a human being to walk on a moving plate. He asked the human being to this is a human is walking on a moving plate, right? Once again, okay, he's walking on a moving plate, and what he does, he captured it at captured. So in those period, 1887, he did it. So plate 2, this is plate 2. He used various different plates to capture various different. So what he did, he took so many different photos, like how we have this no burst photos nowadays. He did it at 1887 itself, in the 19th century. What he did, he took these burst photos and combined them and ran in time. So you got a video, right? So that video told him so how these movements moving from one place. The locomotion actually takes place. So what he found is, he found there is a right stance, there is a midway stance, and there is a fluff. At some point, that is, when running, no, at some point there is a point where both legs are on the field. So he calculated what is the kinetic energy, what is the potential energy, and how this kinetic energy is indeed stored in the foot when you're using the shoes. All those researches he did by capturing these things. So these were valuable informations until the late 20th century, when people tried to analyze, people understood that movements are actually everything, which are the phenomena for any decisions that's taking place in the central nervous system. The outcomes of neuroscience becomes the movements. Then came the birth of this movement neuroscience. Okay, so how do you learn this? So how do you actually capture this movement neuroscience, or how do you record it? In the brain, we all know the famous recording, EEG recordings, but how do you capture these movements? The movements are manifestations of this electrical impulses that's generated in these areas of the brain, right? So how do you even do that? So for capturing these movements, you have something called two important phenomena in mechanics. Hello. Hello, sir, can you hear me? Hello, sir, can you hear me? Hello, sir, can you hear me? Hello, Ravi, sir. Hello.
We can hear you, sir.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. No, since now I cannot see that in the chat box, no, because it's sharing it. That's thank you for your this thing. So how do you even capture these moments? So in those time we captured using camera. Nowadays also we capture using camera. We'll go in detail into that in the preceding slides. But what is the phenomena we use from engineering aspects? So we use a phenomena called kinematics and kinetics. So what is this kinematics? Kinematics is the geometry of the movements. So how do I move? From how much distance I cover, how with what speed I move, and with what accelerations or decelerations that I do that movements is called kinematics. How much force that is required for me to produce that movement is called kinetics. So the when I say the outcomes of the movements, in the geometrical aspects, they form the kinematics, and while the cause that is producing these movements, that is the force, becomes kinetics. Okay, fine. So these two things actually are two important theories, or not even theories. These are the science, engineering sciences that we will be using to study movements. And today, so in 1887, my bridge used this burst kind of camera plates. Okay, these plates to capture this movement by capturing this movement by taking at sequential snapshots. Nowadays also we do the same thing. Let's see how it's done nowadays. Okay, before to that, why do we so in my field, no, we started in my field, I studied, I basically understood the movement. I used and as my model to study these movements. So why am I using and as a model? That we'll see. This is something interesting. It will be very interesting why I've taken and as a model to study this movements, to understand this entire concepts of to have a glimpse of this entire field of wonderful field of movement neuroscience. I used and as a model. Why is that? Okay, let's say that I am actually going to open this shower. The shower has actually two things. One is hot water, another one is cold water, right? So what happens? So what I need to do is, I don't want to burn. Same thing what we saw in the previous slide, that I don't want to burn myself. Water is so hot, I should not burn myself. So what I do is I keep my hand. This is something which we do on a day-to-day basis. I just keep my hand. Then what happens? So have you ever thought what happens internally? Let's see today. We will see that today. So what happens is, the water falls on this hand, and there are sensory endings in the skin. Okay, sensation that's actually produces when water falls is, no, hot or cold. Let's say there are two things, hot and cold. And so I have this cold sensations in receptors. So when these receptors sense this cold sensation, or the temperature sensitive receptors, they what happens is there is a phenomenon called action potential takes place. So there is a temperature sensitive gates that opens up in these nerve endings, and because of that an impulse is produced due to the difference in concentration gradient of ions inside and outside the nerve endings. Okay, so this differences produces an action potential, and this action potential actually traverses via the neuromuscular junction, and what happens is you have this impulses, there is an action potential getting traveled. So action potential, let's understand this action potential for this discussion. So the numberings are clearly given for this discussion. Let's say action potential or impulses or electrical signals that's originating due to the difference in temperature. Okay, so this action potential reaches the sensory neuron, and this is the sensory neuron. The colorings, please understand, the blue color is sensory neuron. Okay, so once the action potential or sense, they actually travel in this axon or in this nerve tract, in this nerve, just like an electric current, right? Then what happens, the sensory axon enters the spinal cord and synapses with the brain. Okay, so first they reach the sensory neurons, project themselves into spinal cord. Okay, and in this case, this is a different case when compared to the vessel case. Here what we will be doing is we will here let's take for discussion, this is not a reflex kind of a thing, this is a evolution kind of a thing. Okay, so here temperature is not so hot, so that no, my spinal cord does not intervene. So what happens, my spinal cord actually takes this sensation and it relays onto the so this sensory axon enters the spinal cord and synapses with the brain, so it relays these informations onto the brain, and then from the spinal cord there is a neuron that's going to take it to the thalamus. Sensory pathway continues the second neuron projecting to the thalamus. So thalamus is, everyone knows that thalamus is a relaying center. So this neuron that's between the spinal cord neuron and the no thalamus is called the interneuron, and this from the interneuron, no, from the thalamus it goes to the I told the motor area, the cerebral cortex or motor cortex, the area number 6, so the M1 area. So the pathway reaches the cerebral cortex for conscious perception. So it reaches the cerebral cortex, and then from the cerebral cortex in the motor area, in the efferent motor area. So whenever say it's a motor area, that's an area that's going to give you the signal. Sensory area is going to take get the signal from all parts of the body. So once this motor area processes it, so what is the processing, what processing it takes? The processing is, okay, the temperature is not so hot, so I have to still wait for the geyser to get hot, or temperature is not so cold, I can take bath. So that is that is the temperature aspect, it's going to take place, and this information is actually going into. So when I say no, I am going to take a decision, that will be taking place in the frontal. So this conscious perception is going to give inputs, it's going to project on various different neurons on the brain. Okay, and the decision of whether you take a bath or not take a bath is depending on your cognitive, it's your voluntary, it's your rational, it's your volition, right? So that's conscious perception. But how do you do that? Then comes the motor action. So the conscious perception says, okay, this hot water is sufficient for me to take a bath. Then an upper motor neuron in the area number 6 or M1 area triggers, and it goes to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord it gets projected to the lower motor neuron, and from the lower motor neuron, this is important. So the neuron now actually gets signal. So what it does, it gives to the muscles. The muscles are the motors of the body. So how it gives the muscles? So there is a connection that how nerve and a muscle are talks with each other. That connection is called neuromuscular junction. So neuromuscular junction. So it's a junction between the nerve and the muscle. So when the nerve endings, when these signals from the brain reaches the nerve endings, there is a specific transmitter getting released. That specific transmitter is called acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine receptors open up the action potential in the muscle, causing contraction in the muscles after the sliding, after the excitation coupling of actin and myosin filament in the muscle. So when that happens, there's a contraction of the muscle. What muscles contracts here? This is flexor digitorum profundus, flexor digitorum superficialis. These are the muscles that's going to flex my hands and fingers to do what? To actually close this hot water or open more of the hot water to make it appropriate for me to take a bath. So this is what it happens. And now getting back, it's not that and is used for this purpose. I'm studying and why I'm studying, and if you see the representation, okay, if you see the represent, so this is the Penfield's model of representation, and if you see here, the and is represented at various different, and is more represented in the brain. Okay, so I will tell a quick story about how this entire how this entire story came into picture. So Penfield, a scientist during the German War, in the Second World War, what he did, he asked so the people who came with mild headaches or you open the brain, he put the electrodes on the brain and stimulated each and every part of the brain, and he studied how this brain, so if you stimulate a specific part, a specific muscle is getting actuated. There is a twitch or a contraction in a specific muscle. So he mapped, okay, these parts actually correspond to ankle, these parts actually correspond to knee, and there is a more representation of hand than any other part of the body, more representation of hand and face than any other part of the body. That's why expressions actually takes place in hand. You are expressive. The body gesture starts with the hand, and facial and the other another body gesture. No, it's actually it is more expressive in the face. Okay, so that's one thing. So I need to study the hand. I need to study the central nervous system. I use hand because hand is more represented here. And second thing is, if you see when compared to the toes, hand has less chaos from the central nervous system when compared to the other end effectors such as foot. So that is another reason we study hand. And hand is a very, very, very dexterous object. So you can use the hand to manipulate so many different tasks to study neuroscience of the brain. And see, if you see, the hand has so many different architectural entities. The muscles that is coming outside the hand called extrinsic, the muscles that are interior, that's called these muscles are usually abductor muscles and adductor muscles, while the muscles that are actually these long muscles coming out from the extrinsic or this flexor and extensor muscles of the hand. And you have so many different bones of the hand, starting from carpal bones, metacarpal bones, and phalanges. So these bones actually form the crux of the skeletal of the hand. And there are like so many different bones and these bones, they have specific degrees of freedom. What is the degrees of freedom? The directions of independent axis of motion. And the hand, when compared on all together, it is a very rich system that produces more than 21 degrees of freedom. Okay, immediately let's immediately quickly another important stuff, another no cultural stuff why you study hand. So if you see, this is the hand of a chimpanzee and it's the hand of a human, and there is like so many different no dimensions of hands of our so many different distant relatives such as gorillas, triglodyans, macaques, and so on. So what is the difference if you see in these two diagrams? The major difference that you can see in these two diagrams is the thumb. The thumb is major. Here the thumb is not well. The length of the thumb is very low when compared to the rest of the fingers. Here the thumb is having substantial length when compared to the rest of its brothers. So why this thumb is very important? Okay, so this is how the evolution has taken place. So these are our relatives: gibbon, chimpanzees, gorilla, orangutans. All this thing, the thumb is not very well developed. So what happens is thumb is like very small, and they use this hand for what they use. And this is another representation. Okay, thumb. I told you what is the important thing. Thumb is not developed when compared to humans. Thumb is as such as it's a big toe. How the big toe in the foot, thumb is like that in the hand. Okay, and if you see, all these animals are kneeling down. If you see, all these animals are kneeling down. Okay, you have that in the mind. These animals are kneeling down. One only animal that is erect is this guy, that is humans. All these animals are kneeling down. Let's have that no. So if you see me, this is the hand and this is the foot. Left one is hand, right one is foot. If you see, in all the cases, no, the foot and the hand, actually the architecture of both of them resembles approximately the same, except in humans. If you see, in humans, foot is totally substantially different or significantly different when compared to its hand, right? So why is that? That's because of development of this important structure called thumb. Okay, so before developing of this thumb, for what the hand is used? Hand is used for walking. The brachiation, that is, they use the hand to pull. And even if you see, the thumb won't be used for brachiation. It is used for, and they use only 4 fingers for eating, plucking and eating. Why? Because this is the life-saving things from predators. So they use for only for 2 things. One is locomotion. Why they use hand? Locomotion and brachiation. Because without brachiation, they will die. Okay, but after a period in time, there came this no what to say, a new species altogether, not a new species, an evolved species that had a very well prominent thumb. So this thumb, wherever it is used to hold a cup, it is used to no hold an instrument in a sport, it's used for holding a pen for writing, it's used for showing some aesthetic movements. So all these things, and it's used for even very very minute of dexterous tasks. What is the task? Folding a paper. So without that opposable member, without that opposable brother, no, nothing is possible. So this thumb, no, it opposes this finger. The one of the major things that evolved with culturally or evolutionary point of view, it says why the gibbons, monkeys, did not have a culture or did not have a civilization as such as human beings. One of the popular theories, which I believe, this is my belief, this is my opinion, I put it in that way rather than a fact, it's my opinion. Why? What I believe is, because of this thumb, what happened when the thumb evolved and the erection of spine enabled humans not to use the hand for locomotion and only for brachiation. So for what they used for developing a civilization culture, for writing, for doing manipulating dexterous tasks such as right from stitching, from pulling a zip, everything they use this thumb. How that is possible? By achieving this complicated movement called finger thumb apposition movements. So what is this finger thumb apposition movement? So when I touch my distal point, when it's done by distal phalange of the finger and the thumb, by flexing towards each other, no, this is called finger thumb apposition movements. And you use this finger thumb apposition movement in almost all the day-to-day activities. Without the thumb, no, without the thumb opposing, you could not have any activity to be performed. Almost this is an almost uh, this is an almost scenario where without thumb, no, you cannot perform a day-to-day activity. Okay, I use this finger thumb apposition movements. So movements. So how do I? So okay. So why am I even doing all these things? That's important. So I need to study movement neuroscience. I need to study how the central nervous system comes up with a strategy to produce movements. How they do provide learning strategies to produce these movements, right? So I use this finger thumb apposition movements as my model. Okay, I used in and finger thumb apposition movements as my model, and I so in a way I actually no element I actually modularized or segmented them in a orderly way. So it produces a sequence. Okay, so when I how to produce so what I've done is, so I use this finger thumb apposition movements to produce a sequence of movements in an orderly fashion, so that it results in a learning. So this phenomena of combining these two, a motor task and a sequence learning, resulted in motor sequence learning. So I use this motor sequence learning to understand the learning strategies of CNS. So how a person learns, how a person unlearns a new tasks, how a person relearns a new tasks. So before that, I'll tell what is sequence learning. So you would have seen sequencing of sounds in speech. So when so what am I doing right now? I'm giving a speech or motor learning. So I have actually ordered my lecture, or ordered my presentation, one by two, one after another, in a sequence way. So since I have done it in an orderly way, and I'm doing it regularly and practicing, that results in sequence learning. Simple. So how do you tell a phone number? You actually sequence the phone number in such a way, so that it will be easy for you to pronounce, it will be easy for you to communicate, right? So that's also sequence learning. So sequencing movements in playing instruments, sequencing actions while driving an automobile, all these things are called sequence learning. So what is sequence learning? I'm actually ordering various different elements in a task. So what are the various let's say in driving, what are the various different elements? I have to see my steering is straight, I have to see the gear is in neutral, I have to apply the clutch, put the gear, before to that ignite the car, then slightly leave the gear, then lightly give a throttle, and car starts into moving forward direction. So this sequence, how do you sequence these movements in so initially you feel very tough, right? Initially you feel tough because you have not learned the task, you don't have much practice. So after, with so much of practice, so if you take in my case, I've driven almost like 8 lakh kilometers. So now it's very easy for me to do. I've sequenced these tasks very well, that in some cases these tasks overlap. For example, I put the gear, I simultaneously put the gear, I start, I do everything, and immediately make a move. So this overlapping of the subsequent movements, this entire entity is called sequence learning. So when I use the sequence learning on a motor task, that's called motor sequence learning. And what is this motor task? Finger thumb apportion movements. Okay. So why I'm doing this finger thumb apportion movements? Why I'm capturing this? I'm capturing this mainly to understand the learning strategies of CNS. Okay. And one of the landmark papers in my field is given by Sosnick, where I told you there are like different geometries. So and the important so I've told you that I'm using finger thumb movements for and I've induced this sequence learning to form motor sequence learning to understand learning strategies, right? So in learning strategies, so what is the parameter I'm going to use to study? For example, in EEG, there are so many different parameters, but in behavior, what are those parameters? I told you the parameters would be kinematic parameters, that is displacement, velocities, acceleration, jerk, etc. So I used kinematics for my research, and I am working in kinematics. Okay, so we have this movement primitive. So when I say movement primitive, let's have such now. I told you, so in let's take the car example. So in car, I have this. So I have to make sure the steering is correct. I have to put the gear. I have to give the clutch. I have to turn on the ignition. Right. So these small sequence of movements, they become movement primitives. They are the elements of a bigger movement. What is the bigger movement? Moving the car in the forward direction. Right. So they become the movement primitive. Okay. So okay. And if I say so they become the movement primitive. Okay. And in this case, let's immediately quickly go into this case. So this is one of the landmark experiments performed by scientist Sosnick in the year 2003. So what he did, this is a tab. This is an iPhone tab. Okay. So if you see this iPhone tab, you have targets. So we call A, B, C, D as targets, and I have this pin. Okay. So what I should do is I have to reach from A to B, B to C, C to D, D to A. Okay. So this is my task. Like around like 40 to 50 participants perform this task, and the kinematics of this task is calculated. This is a plane XY direction. So this is the two axes. One is X axis and Y axis. So these axes are composed of displacements, and displacements in both axes. It's a two-dimensional problem. So what I need to do? It is simple. I need to move from A to B, B to C, C to D, and D to A. Okay. So the movement from A to B. So my entire overall movement is A to B, B to C, C to D, and D to A. Fine. This is on a touch tab, like iPhone touch tab. This experiment now it's been designed. So what happens is I told movement primitive, right? So entire movement is moving from A to start from A and coming back to A. Okay, that is the entire movement. So the movement elements or smaller movements is moving from A to B, B to C, C to D, and D to A. So there are four movement primitives or four subtasks. So tasks is starting from A, ending at A. Subtask is these are the subtasks. Okay. So when I measure the displacement, okay, that is from A to B, there is a quantum of displacement, and when you see, there is a change in velocity. Okay. So when I reach from A to B, I will have a tangential velocity. So at some point at the midpoint would be a max velocity, and when I reach B, my velocity will be 0 because I stop at B, right? So initially at like initial trials of practice, what happened is we have so when I have one velocity curve, I have one stopping point. So that means when I come from A to B, I stop. B to C, I stop. C to D, I stop. D to A, I stop. So there is 1, 2, 3, and 4 stopping points. Okay. So there are the stopping of movements, discrete stopping of movements at initial days of practice, because I'm getting used to that. And with like more number of practice, if you see, there will be only 2 stopping points. So that means the movement primitives are overlapped with each other to give a fine. And if more practice, there will be even a single movement primitive. There will be one start and one end. I won't stop at any point with practice. So what does that mean? So my movement primitives are actually getting overlapped. That's what I told you in the previous slide. So after so much of practice, so I have driven like so much of kilometers. After so much of practice, what I do things simultaneously. I overlap the things simultaneously, so that with minimal effort, minimal time, I excel the task. So how people become from beginners to experts. So what are the various different landmarks change? So this is a simple task. This is simple three-dimensional, two-dimensional task. What I'm talking about is a real task, real 3D task or 21 degrees of freedom task that I have performed in this thing. So for that, what I developed was I developed a glove-based device. Okay, so this is where this neuro instrumentation comes. So when you speak about neuro instrumentation, so what is that? So it is an system that's going to record, scan, and interpret brain activity. So when I say no, okay, where is this interpretation happens? Yes, I'm going to capture the movements with these gloves. Okay, so these gloves actually has tailored tactile switches. So when the thumb touches, when thumb makes an opposition movements with each of those fingers, a specific alphabet will be typed on the screen, and this specific alphabet, no, touching a specific alphabet actually means a specific opposition movement, and this specific opposition movement will be tracked using kinematic trackers. By this way, I've developed a neuro instrumentation kit that enables me to capture the movements, scan the movements, record the movements, and interpret how the movements or how the kinematics of the movements or mechanics of the movements evolve as a function of practice. So okay, so before to all these things, I need to do this research. Okay, initially we saw the theory, now we will get into the research. This is an odd code research. So these are the electromagnetic trackers that's been put on various different phalanges, on various different phalange fingers, and there's a wrist sensor for reference, and this is the lab coordinate system, transmitter coordinate, global coordinate system that's been used in the lab. So here, what I told in the previous slide. So I used a glove-based typing device. So I need a task. I'm using, so typing a specific alphabet by touching a specific phalange. So the segments, the individual segments of the fingers and the thumb was called phalange, and the plural is called phalange. Singular is called phalanx, and the plural is called phalanges. So tracking these phalanges will give me a posture. Okay, so this is a posture. Okay, if you see, this is an opposition movement, right? So before to understand how this opposition movements for a complex task, so this is a complex task, so I need to type an alphabet. Need to type an alphabet. I need to combine various different alphabets to form a word, right? So that is a complex task. Simplest task is touch many times of this various different points and understand the mechanics of the task. So establish the general mechanics of finger thumb movement is the first thing that you need to do. Since this is a new field, this is a new limelight that we are going to establish in this field, that I was working towards. So general mechanics is important. So for that, I recruited 8 participants. So each participants would do 12 tasks, because there are like 12 phalanges for 12 different fingers, and there are like 15 trials. So these trials were calculated, and these trials were designed after certain power analysis techniques, and each trial was performed for 30 seconds. Collection of data was 100 hertz. Full kinematics of thumb and fingers were captured. Filtering of 5 hertz and 4th order Butterworth filter was used, and the velocity profile was calculated using a 5-point stencil. So 5-point stencil is something like, normally we use 2-point stencil or a 1-point stencil. So how do you calculate a velocity? You differentiate the displacement. So for differentiating displacement, you do dy by dx, which is a 1-point or 2-point stencil. 5-point stencil gives you much more accurate velocity results. Okay, and what was performed was, after you capture the data, you need to establish a performance measure, outcome variable. So that outcome variable was designed for the study. One was displacement ratio. So how displacement of the thumb and fingers are changed as a ratio, and another one is movement smoothness ratio. So important aspect that we saw in the Sosnick study, the movements were like discrete, right? There were like 4 stopping points. Initially there were 4 different stopping points, 4 velocity profiles. So the movements are discrete, but as a function of time, there were only 2 stopping points. The 2 or 4 primitives actually overlap with each other to form 2 stopping points or 2 velocity profile, resulting in a continuous smooth velocity profile. So movement smoothness tells me that whether a person is expert or not. At the same time, how these movements are produced will tell how the movements are even controlled. So when the So with non-smooth movements, you have high frequency undulations in the Fourier magnitude spectrum, resulting in the greater arc length. So this is one way of determining the movement smoothness. So what we do, very simple. I have this movement data, or I have this velocity data for my fingers and thumb. I convert it into Fourier magnitude spectrum. Then I do arc length. So Fourier magnitude spectrum will give me the frequency content, and that frequency content, I actually each and every point, I'm connecting each and every point and calculating the arc length. If the arc length is more, then the movement is not smooth. If the arc length, so when the arc length becomes more, when there is high frequency content. When high frequency content comes, when the movements are not smooth. When the low frequency contents comes, the movements are less. When the low movements are more smooth and more continuous. When the movements are more continuous, the high frequency contents are removed. The frequency is very less, and based on that, your movement would be smooth. So these two measures can be seen. So the establishment of this metrics for fingers and thumb was not prevalent until the study that was performed by me in my uh, PhD. So by this, the displacement of thumb and fingers were established. Velocity of thumb and fingers were established. So this is the famous bell-shaped curve that we saw. And you can see, you can ask me why this famous bell-shaped curve is having so much of undulations and stuff, because they are not because these fingers, no, these undulations are not for specific finger, they are for specific finger phalanx. So on this finger phalanx actually not independently controlled. Okay, so this was taken for normal participants. So they are not independently controlled; they are controlled as an whole. So, for example, when I make an opposition movements, it's a combination of flexor digital profundus of the unsuperficialis, as well as flexor pollicis brevis of the thumb, right? So when I make those two movements, if you see the velocity of the thumb, so the thicker lines, no, the thicker lines, if you see, they become the if you see the dotted lines, they become the velocity of the if you see the dotted lines, the velocity of the finger. Uh, Sorry, the dotted lines of the velocity of the thumb, and the thicker lines of the velocity of the finger. If you see, the finger velocity has more undulations. Okay, because they are not able to control, because thumb has a specific set of muscles. Okay, and independent and altogether a special set of muscles, or specific set of muscles controlled, while the fingers, if you take, it is a group of muscles. So you have the flexor digitorum profundus, so it extends its tendon all the way through the carpal bones, all the way to the back side of the on the dorsal side of the finger, dorsal side of the finger, and make an flexion. So when flexor digitorum profundus flexes, you can see almost all the fingers are relatively flexed. That's because of their connectiveness with the finger, because a single tendon is going to be no, flexing almost all the fingers. Fine. So that's why the smoothness is comparatively less when compared, because in fingers, if you take in fingers or phalanges, the smoothness is actually, it's not an independent smoothness, it's a combination of various different parameters. But in thumb, it's an independent smoothness, because it has a specific group of muscles providing the control. So as a conclusion, what I was able to see was thumb produced more smooth and larger movements when compared to the fingers. That's the one of the main reasons. That was one of the hallmark reasons. Smoother movements, as well as longer movements, that's actually used as an opposing movement in doing almost all the dexterous tasks. Finger cannot provide you the fine dexterous movement, but the thumb along with finger can provide that, because of its smoothness nature, as well as because of its longer displacements it's producing. Fine. After establishing this general mechanics, there's a need to understand how. So now general mechanics is taken place. So general mechanics is established of the fingers. Okay, so we have understood the thumb is producing more and smoother movements. Then, okay, then what next? So how this movement smoothness, or how this kinematic parameters are changed as a function of practice. Okay, so for that, what was the next experiment was designed with the glove that I showed in the previous slide. where touching a specific tactile switch. Let's say I'm touching tip of the thumb with the middle phalange of the index finger, alphabet S will be typed on the screen. Okay, so by this way, no, by using this 9 different phalanges and special keys, I have formulated various different set of words, and the participants has to type these words in a game like interface. Just like, for example, they need to type saint, they have to use these kind of movements. These are called movement primitives, and SAINT becomes the saint, and this is the and in the resting position. So what I designed is I used a lab view for data collection, and coded an Adobe Flash Player game, where this no, uh, game was actually no so the game was actually synchronized with the LabVIEW software to collect the data. So what are the data that was collected? The data that was collected. So this is now initially we have established general mechanics. Now I need to see whether this task is even can be used as a learning task, right? So is it a learning sensitive task? Because there are certain tasks which are actually not learning sensitive tasks, but they're adaptive sensitive tasks. But what we want to know is how central nervous system comes up with learning strategies to perform a task, right? So we need to understand first. Initial point is I need to understand whether this is a learning sensitive task. So for that, I placed this alphabets randomly for this experiment on the finger phalanges, and type this various different positions with the different use various different finger approaching movements to type different alphabets to produce a word. Okay, so the task is to type the various different so let's say saint, so SAINT. So if you type currently, it will go show green color, and if you type with specific speed, initially the speed will be very less. After with practice, the speed increases. Let's see whether it increases. So that's the so why did I perform this experiment? To see whether the speed and accuracy increases as a function of practice. I've established the mechanics. Is that first, and then is the timing the more important dimension of initially I've seen the first 3 dimensions of these things are working fine. Yes, the kinematic, the displacement, the kinematic dimensions are working fine. With the experiment one, it showed that thumb is more smoother and making bigger movements when compared to the rest of the fingers. That we were able to establish with the first experiment. And the second experiment, I want to see whether this task is learning sensitive. So I have to test the fourth dimension also, the time. Okay, so for that, what I need to do is I initially the so I kept some small speed here. With practice, the speed increases here. And so what I did is I recruited like 8 participants. They were asked to come continuously for 15 days. Even Sundays and Saturdays they were asked to for a day they were asked to practice for 30 minutes. Okay, so the data that was collected was just key press and key release data. So when I press this, what is the so I when the key was pressed, when the key was released, only those data was collected. And from that data, as I told you in the previous this thing in the kinematics, I formulated the metrics such as displacement ratio and smoothness measure. Here I formulated 3 different measures such as movement time, uh, dwell time, completion time. So what is this movement time? So movement time is the time between the release of a finger and the press of the release of alphabet and the press. So this is saint, right? SAINT. I told for each alphabet I have a pressing time and the releasing time, just like for each alphabet. So SAINT, for each of these alphabets I have 2 data. One is key press, key release, right? So so if I take difference between key press and key release of the same alphabet, that's called dwell time. How much time I'm staying on that finger? If I take the difference between key release and key press of the uh, with the succeeding alphabets, then that becomes movement time. If I take key press and key press of the first and the last alphabet, that becomes completion time. So all these times actually reduce as a function of practice. Okay, so the time that I'm staying on a key, and the time I'm taking to move from one alphabet to another, and the time I'm taking to complete the alphabet, complete the word or a sequence, all reduces as a function of time. That is so. Yeah, what it tells us, the speed increases as a function of practice. So that I was able to understand. Okay, and another important aspect I was able to find is same. Obviously, with practice, the errors reduced, so accuracy increased. Initially, the errors were more. With practice, the errors reduced subsequently. Okay, now, so I told you, the practice was performed for 15 days. The practice was performed for 15 days. Uh, but the data that I had, if you see the data that I have is, so if you see early, no, when I say early, middle, and late, so this is mean value of 1 to 3. This is 6. This is 7, 8, 9. This is 13, 14, 15. So initial 3 days, middle 3 days, and late 3 days. I have taken mean and I have plotted here for clarity, for brevity purpose. So for brevity, for clear understanding purpose. So if you see early and middle, early and late had significant difference, but there is no significant difference between middle and late. So what does that? It shows me it is common for all, for the CT, DT, MT. So it shows me that after a certain period in time, my learning curve becomes saturated. So my learning curve becomes almost a straight line or saturated. There is no significant change. What does that mean? The person at this point, at certain point between early and middle, oh, he becomes an expert. So after that, there is only a small change in the performance gains. Okay, so there's a small change in performance, he has become an expert. So within this the early and middle, there is a lot of changing that's taking place. There's a lot of changing that's taking place in the kinematics level, and in the timing level, these are the changes. In the fourth dimension level, these are the changes that's been taking place. So but at the kinematics level, we will see what are the changes. Okay, with the timing level, these are the changes that's taking place. And after middle and late, there is no significant difference, because the differences have saturated. So if you see, it's a big drop in the with days of practice. There's a big drop, and after certain periods or days of practice, what happens? The line becomes almost a straight line, and this point where the line becomes almost a straight line is an important. It's an important point that I wanted to determine. It's a very important point I want to determine. So why is that important? Because that point is going to divide these regions into two things. One is learning region, another one is saturation region, and the point that's going to do that for me is saturation point, and the entity and the entity on which this saturation point sits is called the learning curve. Okay, and this is how my the participant data is going to look. Okay, and I'm going to fit the data to that, and this curve that's I'm going to fit it to that is of exponential fit, and that's a so the curve, that exponential curve, the degrading curve that's going to fit to this data is called the learning curve. So I fit this curve, and what I do, I try to determine these values of n and b. So n is the number of days of practice, t1 is the day one practice, and b, what is that b? And b is a logarithmic exponent of the learning rate. So when the learning rate increases, my the slope, the b increases. So the so what happens? My learning, so number of days required for me to learn the task reduces. When the learning rate increases, my number of time required to learn the task reduces. So what I did, okay. So what I did, I collected this day, like 15 days of practice, and I did. And another important implication that I give to this, to the research community is, so one of the important factors that people face, the scientists face when they actually do this learning kind of an experiments is when that is one of the biggest thing is when to stop these experiments. When should I stop this experiment? When to know that a novice has become an expert? This is the point when these people actually have become an expert. Okay, so whatever things that you do after that is a fine tuning or putting the ice on the cake. That's the final touch that you are going to do in the saturation region, but that's very small. They are important, but they are very small when compared to the learning region. So this point is what we need to determine. Okay, that's one of the important implications that we want, that I have given to this field of motor learning. So what I did, after collecting this, I fixed this curve. I determined so coefficients. So these are the coefficients. So T1, T2 are the coefficients, and I'm going to plot this. So what I was doing is, so I have this curve. So I need to plot this curve, but this curve should have a minimal error with the curve, with the actual data, right? So that's how we plot a curve. That's how we fit a curve. So I used minimal squared error technique to determine the least square error that's actually between these two curves, and determine the coefficients. And this coefficient I plotted thereafter, so it resembles this red line. Okay, and then what I did, I actually compare the coefficients of subsequent. So I compared like day one coefficient, T1, T2, T3, 15. So 15 coefficients I have. I compared them. So I actually what I did. I consecutive day learning curve coefficients, I took a percentage, and the curve becomes inverted curve. At a certain period in time, it becomes almost 100% or one that's closing to 100%. Why is that? Because very simple. Because after a certain period in time, there is no change. The curve is almost so. When I divide these 2 points in space, what I will be getting, I will be getting 100%. So at what point this 100% is reached? So let's say, because in most of the cases it's not 100, it becomes 90, 91, 92, 93. So I kept 90% as the threshold. What is that point? What is the x-intercept at the threshold? Tells me my point where the persons have become expert, right? Similarly, so after doing that, what I did is I took the same thing for x1, s2, s3, and did a percentile analysis. So what happened, how much of data falls? 90%, 85%, 75%, 50%, and based on that, and x-intercept was determined, and this x-intercept, for example, was different for different measures, and the maximum value was for error percent, and that error percent told me that these are the values, and the error percent, if you say the max of this value is 4.75, and this or 5, let's say 5.26, 5.3, approximately takes 6 days for the participants to become an expert in the task. Okay, it took approximately 6 days for the participants to become an expert in the task. So this showed how do our research no how so this showed that uh, it takes approximately 6 days for the participants to become an expert, and during this 6 days of expertise, the movements so 6 days of expertise, it takes some substantial period in time. Okay, so after establishing these two entities, then I'll just give a very brief light on other experiments that I performed in my thesis. So after that, what I did was, so I established the general mechanics timing. So I've established first three dimensions, fourth dimension. Okay, in all the four dimensions, this task is actually okay. This task is okay. The mechanics seems to be appropriate. So after doing all this prelim, I have to jump into the major tasks. So what I want to know. So what I wanted to know was learning. So what I want to learn is learning strategies of CNS, right? So what do I mean by learning strategies? So how do I learn a task? How do I unlearn a task? How do I relearn a task? So let's say a simple example. So I told you about the car driving example in the first slides. So what I did was, let's say in India it is right hand drive. When you go to UK, it's left hand drive. Not Europe. Europe it's also right hand drive. So when you go to when you go to one second. When you go to Europe, when you go to UK, it's left hand drive. So all the task is going to remain the same. Everything is going to remain the same. So what you are going to do is you are going to unlearn certain things. What are those things? I'm going to put the gear in the right side. My clutch is going to be in the right side, and my throttle is going to be on the left side. So this mapping, the realigning of this mapping, you are going to unlearn and relearn. So you're going to unlearn, then you're going to relearn. So how much time it's going to take place? So that was my third experiment, and final experiment is how to. So until now we have seen how these four dimensions work independently. Then in the fourth experiment, how the posture itself changes as a function of time was my fourth experiment. Okay, so all these 4 to 5 experiments was crux of my thesis. So that focused on how people become expert in a task. What are the minimal postures that people has to adopt to regain their normal rhythm in cases of cerebral palsy and stroke patients. Okay, so this was my overall overall research that I was able to focus. The overall research that towards the field of learning strategies, and how these learning strategies can be adopted to stroke and cerebral palsy population. After that, I told you the purpose of neuro instrumentation is to record, scan, and interpret. After interpreting, so the instrument that I have developed was used as a task instrument. Uh, So it was used as a task instrument to record the timing signals as well as kinematic signals, right? So now I'm going developed glove has to be commercialized. So I told you in the very first slide, I wanted to be in a place. I wanted to fit in the fit in. So where do I fit in the research? So I want to fit in a place where the research product is going to go for commercialization. So that's where I actually place myself in the bigger niche. That's where I want to develop a niche for myself in the research society and yeah, in the in the educational framework as well. So what so so until now the research was performed under I told you what is the crux of this research. So now the instrument that was developed in the research, the globe based instrument that was used in the research to understand the movement strategies and learning strategies of central nervous system. I'm going to use it for another application. So I'm going to move that resource into another application. So whenever a research product is moving into another application, there's a very large problem that happens. What is the large problem? There are no one to buy the research. There is no one to understand your research. There is no one to actually approve your research. So these are certain problems. But actually, why it's actually happening? It's not actually happening because of others. It's actually happening because of ourselves. So we are not able to. So when you develop a research, so you're doing it for a problem. That is that solution even viable? When I say that the solution is even viable, what does that mean? Is that solution going to reach a large number of population? Is a large number of population pay you for that solution? Now when the moment you come into until the research, you are going to see only the ethical, empathy, and philosophical, scientific approach towards a problem, right? Solution. So a solution is based on all these things. That is your philosophical, ethical, empathical, and then research oriented. So all these things will be until research. The moment you go into the business aspect, or the moment you go into the commercial aspect, one thing that comes into play is who's going to buy your research, who's going to buy your product. So whenever you commercialize a solution, whenever you're going to commercialize, is it a viable? Can you make this solution? So what I did, so let me take my case. So what I did a glove based device, right? I made a glove based device, and this glove based device can type alphabets on the screen, and it can give me key press and key release information. So that's the neuro instrument that I have developed, correct? Okay, and I've used this neuro instrument to actually scan record the movement activity, not the brain activity, but the movement or behavioral activity. After all, behavior or the consequences of movements or the consequences of brain activity. Okay, without any brain activity, without any central command, there won't be any movements. So unless the movements are there, the organism is alive. Central nervous system is actually actively producing signals. So by understanding, that's why the entire presentation went to understand the brain activity. I used hand to as a model, and for hand as a model, I used one of the important tasks, finger opposition tasks, and studied so many different studied using it various different experiments. So the neuro instrument that I've developed was a glove-based device, and this glove-based device. Okay, now let's say I've devised this glove-based device for a research purpose. Okay, fine. The problem was to understand so many different research problems, and I was able to give appropriate solutions for the research problems. Fine, but who are the people going to buy that solution? Then I have to make it a viable product, right? So I have to make a viable product. I have to make it people to buy it. So who are those people? And then what I need to do is, okay, there is a model that I need to, just like how I used and as a model, I need to use a business model. So I need to frame my business model. I need to propagate my business model in the form of business model canvas. So these are the various entities of a business model canvas. So what I do, I identify my customer segment. Okay, these are my customer segment, and what are the purpose? Also, what would be the roles of this customer segment? Okay, are they decision makers, or the end users, or the buyers? So all these things I will be separating it. What would be my value proposition? Immediately that now you're entering a business prompt. Now after a research, after a researcher, after a person who has started a research, a new line of research in India. Now it's up to you to no, it doesn't stop there. So what I told you is you need to take the product to the end user. You need to give that solution to the end user. So it's not easy. It's not easy. Until now, it's a different story. Now it's totally a different dimension where you are going to look in. So you need to tell about the value proposition, where you stand, what your product is going to provide. So what is the thing that your product is going to enable these people to take the purse out of money out of their wallet to pay you. That's important. That's very important. So what is the value proposition of your product? So what is the pain relieving points of your product? What are the brain creators of the product? So okay, how am I going to do that? I'm going to like interview each and every one of the stakeholders who are available, who would be so who are actually the important keystones in the society who's going to who are facing these problems. So who are those people? Patients and caretakers of those patients. And in this case, I use this. So what I did is I wanted to make it a viable, right? I need to make it a approachable to wide population. So the key what is that, the alphabet output system or an alphabet or a typing gloves was converted into speaking gloves. So what I did, I used a module that converts the text into speech. So whenever I wanted to say something, I type it in the fingers, I make an apportion movement with the fingers, make appropriate words, make appropriate sentences, and I press a button, it speaks out in their own voice. That's important. That's going to work as a biofeedback. Okay, this is the value proposition of my product. And value proposition is going to say what are the pain, what is the advantages of the product, why people has to go for a product. That's called value proposition. And so I identify who are the various stakeholders. So speech disorder, audiologist, audio therapist, speech disorder people, their caretakers. So all those people I interviewed. I interviewed in the sense I asked them few questions. So what are the day-to-day problem they face? Okay, what are the day-to-day problem they face? So these would be my customer segment. So these are my customer: neurologists, hospital management, caretakers of the patient, speech therapists. So all these people I interviewed, I made a market survey. Okay, and the market survey theoretically I made using this available literatures, and I found that there was so lot of people who want this solution. Okay, there's a big market that's available for this solution. Okay, there's a very big market that's available for this solution. Very good. But what is the so we know that there's a big market. That's good. That's good. That's very good. That's very good. That's the starting point. So this tableau column is the starting point. So people who are having this laryngeal cancer, they smoke, the larynx is removed because of laryngeal cancer, and there are like broca aphasia. People cannot actually speak or connect to two or different words, and because of neural disorder, there is the speech muscles are disabled, and because of dementia, there is no cognitive aspect. People speak rubbish out of whatever they want. So all these actually make a problem. So they make your patients. Okay, they become your customer segments. But it's not only them, they are going to be a customer segment. So they are okay, they are patient. They form one floor of your stakeholders. There are so many different stakeholders whom you need to meet: neurologists, hospital management, caretakers of the patient, and speech therapists. It's all these people who are going to influence this patient to buy this. Okay, so this is how you actually take your product. So I've developed the research. Okay, I cannot stop it at that point, right? I developed the research. Very good. I developed the research. Fine. For a solution, and I'm very religious about the solution. Fine. Very good. But is your, and another thing, no, you are religious. You are very much sentimental. We are attached to your product. Very good. But is your product is going to get validated to these different lines, to different these things? If it's not going to, if it gets a cross in one of these things, you need to seriously consider to dropping the product, because that product is not going to sell. If the product is not going to sell, no, there's no point. You are going to become because now it's pure business. You need to rotate whatever you're invested. You won't be getting whatever you're invested if the product is not having these things. Okay, what you should do? Okay, what I'm my product is not having. So initially I was not able to validate, like speaking gloves also failed so many different there was no proper customer segment. There was no proper value proposition. The costs were so high. I won't be getting revenue streams for. So okay, okay, the revenue streams is how we are going to get the revenue. Cost, or what are the working costs? Okay, as such, for this discussion, let's have that. Everything was wrong in my case. So what I did, I reiterated the product. Okay, I reiterated, I changed the product so that all these things can be suited, so that whatever the problem the customer is having, okay, you can actually provide that as a solution. So what you need to do? Nothing. Rework on the product. That's it. Make another research flow, another research proposal on the product, work on the product, and make it a complete solution. So that, and it should be very quick. This is a technological work, very fast one. People should not overtake you. So these are the things that you need to take care of. And market opportunity. What is that's what I told you. Have a market opportunity, you need to have a market survey, and this market survey includes business model canvas. You need to speak to neurologists, you need to speak as a person. You go and sit with them, find these are the problems these people are facing. They cannot speak, they cannot type, they can use a mobile phone. People dementia, they cannot use a mobile phone, they cannot use an app, they cannot install an app, they cannot connect various different elements in a cognitive level. So these problems are very important. So I came up with a simple solution. Just make an approaching movement, simple movement, touch the tip of the fingers. No, a specific sentence would be typed, specific sentence would be spoken. So I just press it. It will telling, I want food, I want medicine, I want to go to toilet. It will be told in the native language. And another important thing is these people used to speak. Okay, these are the people used to speak, uh, but they don't speak. So what we do is, what I did is I took the base voice from their family, from their close relatives, as well as from them, made made a convolution technique, linear predictive coding, and so many different techniques in natural language processing, and tried to come up with a voice with which these people would speak. Okay, so that why I'm putting so much of effort, that's another question, right? The important thing with the speech, so important the thing with these populations are, these are not birth defects. Okay, these defects are acquired defects at some point. Okay, there are also birth defects, but so, most of the population, or 80% of the population, or even 90% of the population that we approach are not birth defects. There are actually acquired defects. So they would have been speaking properly, but due to some accident, due to some issues, no, they would have ended up with this state. Okay, so by this way, no, biofeedback is established. So when people hear their own voice, they tend to regain their natural speaking qualities back, not natural speaking qualities. Uh, I mean, in a sequential way. So that's the value proposition that we are making. That as an inventor, and as a person who wanted to sell this product, I'm keeping it on the table. Okay, so same glove that I used in the research, same neuro instrument that I used in research to capture the behavior. I'm using that as a speaking glove. So same glove I can, the same glove I can give it to the research society. That's good. That's very good for them to perform their research. Just sell the same thing. Okay, use this glove. You can perform so many different tasks, so many different experiments, so many different papers you can publish, and so on. You can give that, but I have to take it to the next level, to the population, to the people. There are problems. There are some simple solutions people need, simple and yet quite effective solutions people need. So you need to take it as an inventor. So we need to take it to commercialization. But commercialization is, as I told you, it's not so simple. So it is not very easy to make people to take their cash out of their wallet to buy your product. It's very tough. It's very tough actually. So that's where researchers actually stop at the level of research. Researchers, as such, any inventor, stop at the level of research. They don't want to go into the business aspects because it is very tough to convince the customers. But one thing that what Apple told, or even Elon Musk told, when your product is very good, you don't need to reduce the price. You don't need to reduce the price. Your product is the good. Your product is the best. The best. I'm just putting the in front of the product. Your product is the best. Then you don't need to no, worry about anything. People will come and stand in the line to buy an Apple. They come and stand in line to buy a Tesla, which is approximately 1 crore in India. So they don't care. The value proportion, the value that you provide to the customer is so much, you don't need to worry. On the other hand, okay, it is I need to provide a cost effective stuff. Okay, still you can provide, people are ready to buy. So these are some trade lines that you need to understand. Are you going to invest in a very big way? Invest it and do it. I'm going to start very small. Okay, I have this research proposal, I am going to take it to commercializing. I want to take this research product to commercialization. What I need to do, very simple. What you need to do is, you need to just do this business model canvas. There are so many different videos that's available, how to connect to different model canvas. Once you do the business model canvas, you can reiterate your products. You can reiterate your product. That's how I did. I reiterated the product so that no, it can be reaching a. So your population can even be a corona patient, because people, certain people, when they speak, they speak what they do is they spit saliva, and saliva is one of the important carriers of the COVID-19. So they want to speak, and certain people cannot speak. Their voice is very low. They put the mask. These are all the pain points, and they feel like lonely if they cannot speak. They have to. They feel like they are deaf. They feel like dumb, like showing the hand gestures. So there were few people who actually asked that they want this glove for their purpose for communication. So that's how you need to you need to place your customers. You need to, channelize your customers appropriately. And before doing all that thing, before you need to know who are your competitors, who are also whom you are going to run the race. Or these people are giants. Okay, if they are giants, fine. So if they are gyms, you need to be strongly proportionating yourself. You need to strongly evaluate yourself. You need to place yourself in such a way they're not going to kick you out of the business. So how do you do that? You do that in this. If you see, these are the features. I'm going to approach the market. These features, people have these features. Yes, there are people who don't have the features. But when you see, I have all the features, so that gives me a competitive advantage of my product over the others. The quality that I told you, right? That's what Steve Jobs as well as Elon Musk told. My product is the product, right? It provides the quality a customers really needs. So I don't worry about the cost. But in this case, actually, I placed it competitively in such a way that, for Indian market and for the rest of the world, for a bulk scaling, I placed it in a competitive cost, not like how these people have placed it above their competitors, the product cost. So in this, it's a competitive cost, but if you see the value that it's going to provide is enormous. It's humongous to be provided, because all the features that people face in day-to-day life, these features, our product, my product will provide. So once that is validated, once I do this canvas, and once I do that canvas and I validate that canvas with the rest of the products in the market. Okay, you validate the product with the rest of the, you validate that canvas with the rest of the product and with your product. Obviously, you should be honest. When with the product, you see that your product is validating at all the levels. You are fit for commercialization. The product is fit for commercialization. It doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. Where it stops, at at another level. So as an engineer, now you are I was an engineer. I was a software engineer. I always an hardware engineer. I prefer hardware engineer. I learned software engineering, and then a researcher, a hardcore researcher. Then I developed the product. Okay, that's where people stop. That's where the people stop. Now I'm just giving a next step, next foot into and commercialization, where you need to know about most of the projections. How do you invest your money? How do you where do you get the money from? How do you get the money from? How do you channelize your money? So what are the various different costs you would incur while producing the glove? So this is the cost that I incur when you're producing a unit of 100 units of glove, because there were requirements for 300 units or 400 units from the speech therapy schools in and around Chennai. Like 300 units were required. So I need to provide a production cost. I need to make financial projections. As an engineer, it's not initially it would be tough for anyone as a researcher, but we need to learn. As I told you, you need to understand the business canvas modeling. You need to understand whether is your product viable. Viable in the sense, okay, I'm investing 5 rupees. At least will I be able to get the 5 rupees back? That's important. Okay, then 50 rupees, 100 rupees, or whatever you earn thereafter is the thing that you're going to obtain for your value proportion and your business model, right? So first you need to understand what are the various different costs that you can incur. What are the raw materials? For what raw materials is this much? 60% of salary I need to have, 70% of utilities, power cuts, water resources, and all this, and the total annual variable, including all these 3 years, it is around approximately like 8 lakhs and 60,000. Then you put the fixed cost. Then you actually calculate it is around like 1,54,000. Then you put like so all your instruments go for depreciation. So almost the total annual cost at the end, annually I required approximately 12 lakhs to produce not 12 lakhs is It's comparatively, it's not for a single unit as such you produce. As such, I told, no, I produce 5 rupees, I get 5. That's not so straightforward. No, it depends on so many different factors. It's not a linear equation, but it's a somewhat a non-linear equation, because it has to take place on the fixed cost as well as the variable cost. You need to give the salaries, you need to pay your rental bills, you need to pay your current bills. There are so many different things that you need to do, right? So you need to different aspects that you need to take care. Similarly, uh, you need to know, is this so I am getting a loan, let's say, no, I'm getting a loan for 12 lakhs, and if the total I'm getting a loan for 12 lakhs, and if I need to see if I'm be able to get the profit. Okay, if I'm okay, the profit initially I'm doing 1.42 lakhs. I cannot pay in the first month, right? So then when will I be able to pay the profit? When will I become cash positive? When will I overthrow this thing of negative cash? So those things you should be doing with financial projections, at which year of your incursion of the of your company will you become profitable. So those things you should be in a position, at least minimal, you should be in a position to uh, up and stand and running within 5 years. Within 5 years, a very good and a very it's actually challenging to run in 5 years, but you can do it in 5 years. And if it cannot be done in 5 years, it cannot be done in any number of years. So you should not be religious with the product. So you should not have only a single product, you should have a chain of products. You just go on with here I've given you the projection for a single product. Okay, and this is how so if I'm seeing one unit is 20, so it gives you, let's see a very brief. So one unit, so I manufacture 120 units. Okay, I manufacture 120 units. It's approximately 24 lakhs. So 120 units, I have to give it, I told you, know, the speech school I need to give, those are my customers, those people are my customers. So I have to give 120 so my net amount is 24 lakhs, and gross income is 24 lakhs. Okay, so this would be my 24 lakhs. And if you see my value is so I need to understand when I become uh, cash positive, no, the break even, when I will when my costs are overcome by the profit. When will my costs be overcome by the profit? It will be approximately at 20%. No, so 20% of my profit is sufficient to overcome these loans. So that is a very good number. So break even at 20.74 is 24 when if I sell so if I sell 24, that is 25 pieces, the 25 pieces will break even all the costs incurred during the production. So these things you should analyze. Okay, so so I'm getting a loan, and I've got an order. Obviously, you getting a loan is not the thing. Anyone can get a loan actually, with the appropriate qualification, with the appropriate infrastructure. No, people will get the loan. The important thing is, how are you going to repay the loan? How are you going to repay it, the loan? So when that good time is going to come, that's called a break even. The project viability. No, I told about viability. When is it going to happen? It's going to happen at 20% of the total cost of the production. That's very good. So so when you say 20%, when if I send 20% to within 25 products, if I sell 25 products, I can actually pay the all the costs. I can actually take care of all the costs that's produced, if it is at 20%. And gross margin is 50.85. Project viability, the EBITDA is that actually going to evaluate your is going to evaluate your business model. Gross profit margin is 50.85. That's very, very well done. And break even prediction. So let's see, each price is 20,000. So 20,000 into 20 is 4 lakhs, and the fixed cost is 3 lakh and 19,000. So if I sell 20 quantities, I can overcome this. So 24 knots will break even all the cost incurred during production. So that's what we wanted to see. So 120 is the order that I got from the street school. So if I sell that, my margin is 50.85. But if I sell 25 items itself is sufficient. Okay, so 25 items itself, I will become cash positive. So that's important. Okay, okay, fine. So until now, what I told you is how do you see the research side of neuroscience? So for seeing the research side of neuroscience, you need for I so research side of neuroscience, I jumped into something called movement neuroscience. That's my area where I did my research, and the movement neuroscience. To do that, I developed a neuro instrument, and that neuro instrument was further taken for commercialization, valuation, and validity and viability. So once that's taken, so I told you where as researchers we are stopping. As engineers, why we are stopping there? Very simple. Any engineer, anyone, you or myself, we have that bias in the mind. No, okay, this product we have done until this point. Somebody will take it to next level. Somebody will take it to that level. That's good. That's good. That somebody might be someone. Well, fine. But why can't we, why can't that be? Why can't that be we or me? Why is that? Why that me doesn't come? Because of so much of insecureness that happens, because running a company is not easy, jumping into the business is not easy, commercialization is not easy, that you would have known by seeing those few slides of commercialization. So that's actually not so uh, yeah, easy. So that's where so when people when there are people to do certain things, we don't get opportunity. Anyway, there are so many people do the same, but where do we get the opportunities? We get the opportunities at the point when there are no one to do the job, right? When there are no people doing the job, right? So when there are no people not doing the job, and I mean by when there are no people ready to take up the job, when there are no people who wanted to push it to the next level, there comes opportunity. So there's a wide range of opportunity available for commercialization neuro products, especially in India. So India as such is importing 98% of medical products, and neuro products are very very less in India. So any neuro solution, neuro instrumentation developed in India can be can be taken to next level for viability. So the channel that you need to take up is you need to find who are your people who are going to sell, and are they going to buy it immediately. For example, in my case, I changed that into a speaking glove, a viable solution that is actually a problem in current scenario. A school is ready to give an order for this many number of products, and that's where the opportunity. So that is the opportunity. So when I took that neuro instrument for typing device, I was not able to get a product. So there was this. If you see that model canvas, I was rejected in so many different places. Then I need to. So based on the solution. So when people say no, no, rather than text inputting, I need a speech output. It would really help us. So I need to reiterate my device. I need to research one more time how to convert the TT into text to speech. So once you do that, text to speech, that's available. Once you do that, but what's not available, what's novel in that is to give the voice in the to give the speech in their own voice, the own vocal coordinates, the own vocal signature. It's not available. So that's where the novelty comes. That's where the product that I develop, no, acts as prominence. That's where the prominence, because that acts as a biofeedback. I told you that. So that's where the opportunity. So the opportunity, what I wanted to tell to all my uh, colleagues who's actually attending this seminar with grateful respect and humbleness is we have opportunities to take it to the, because I know we engineers can solve the problems, but taking that to next level, taking that to commercialization is what we lack. It's not that we lack, we can do, definitely we can do, but because of so many different factors, right, from social economic factors, no, we are actually not in a position to do. But if it so that's where the opportunities, so that's the lacuna. So when the lacuna comes, there comes great opportunities. So I wanted to fit into that opportunity. So I wanted to give a glimpse of how that was taking place. So yeah, whatever I told you, it's very simple, right, from modeling, business modeling, and projections. So all these things you can actually do with a simple Excel sheet. Okay. So I invest this much, will I get that much? So these are all linear models, the projections, break-even analysis, the project viability, all these are available in online. So what I suggest as an humble student of this entity, I mean, humble student of this phenomena of converting research to commercialization. As an humble student, what I went through is the moment you wanted to take it to commercialization, what you can do is very simple. Just make sure that it's you who have developed the instrument, right? So you can just know the cost. Just put the cost to these models. It will tell you, okay, will you be able to break even? If you cannot break even after 5 years, why is that happening? So if you can break even after 5 years, first you can theoretically find whether your product is viable. Then you can go for business model. Then you can actually go and interview each and every stakeholder in your chain. Let's say a doctor, let's say anyone in the chain, and see that whether your product is satisfying their problems. Okay, so until their problems are solved, they won't take the money from their wallet. I was able to see that. Until you convince them, it's once you convince them, once you are able to seen as a prominent person in the market, then the amount of respect as well as the amount of no revenue that we are going to gain is a different thing. So that's where I wanted to end. So thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I always consider myself as a, student. So now as a colleague, I really thank Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Technology, AACT Training and Learning Academy, online faculty development program and professional development program, for giving this opportunity to speak with my colleagues, to share my experiences, started as a uh, how I started my engineering career, then stretching various different aspects of the professional environment, going into a corporate world of TCS, then coming back to the research field, then getting using the corporate experience to convert something into a commercial solution, a commercial viable solution. Not saying successful solution, viable solution. Successful solution is when it reaches masses, that becomes the successful solution. Will become a viable solution, and then now where I am. So to give something, so share this experience itself is really an honor for me, that with so many pioneers in the meeting, in front of them, it's an honor. I really thank Dr. Ravi sir, who was my to put it very different, he's very senior to me, but when he was doing his doctoral research, I was his ME classmate, so we came to know in that way. So I really thank Ravi sir for giving me this opportunity. I thank the faculty ma'am of the department where Ravi sir belongs, and thank you all. Thank you, and you can always. I've already shared my number, email, anything you can email in this field, no, in this field, or how to commercialize any products. You can always contact me, and because I went through so much different experience in going through commercialization. So let it be certification, let it be like trivial no, uh, experimental validations, evaluation of the company. How do you go for an angel investments? Anything you can actually contact me with these details, and you can ask me any questions. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. I have 5 more minutes, I think. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Dr. Dhanush, this is Ravindran.
Yes, sir. Tell me, sir.
Just one question I just want to ask. And before that, it was a wonderful presentation. It was a
Thank you,
very
sir.
nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
And your product is actually the one which converts typing information into voice, right?
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Will this be also useful for sign language?
No, actually, there is a product that actually uses the sign language. My product, so the problems, there were like few problems or pain problems that people are facing with sign language, because they have to. So these people are, let's say, the population that I'm eating, or the people who actually were speaking yesterday or day before yesterday. Suddenly, an accident or something happened, and they are at this stage. So they cannot. They felt that learning a new language was altogether very tough for them. So the glove that I have developed actually doesn't use sign language, but what it does is it allows you to type messages, the primitive messages, and you can convert them into sentences. The moment you press a button, it gives as a speech output, so that it gives the speech output in their own voice. So once so that doesn't require any software apps or anything. It's a standalone device. So no need to learn a new language, and you can actually ask for your native language. You can ask the team, okay, I want the language to be in Tamil, I want the language to be in Telugu, I want the language to be in Gujarati or something. Based on the vocabulary and the phonetics and all the stuff, the glove would be delivered to you. So that's the business model we are eating. So that's the value proposition actually we are putting on the plate, sir. Yeah.
Okay. And I have another question. Since you were discussed about the commercialization,
Yes, sir.
and I understand this product has also been patented, and is it patented in IPR?
No, actually, this product actually has this is actually what to say? It has two levels of patent. We are planned to register, but we are not done. We are actually in the process of filing it, because the prior product that also needs a patent. It's in the level. It's in the process. It's in the process of patenting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, any queries, you can also call me, or you can even ask me now, or you can even email. Yeah. Any questions, sir? Any questions? So, any questions? Anyone?
Hello.
Hello?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
If no question are there, I have one question. As of
Yes.
my interest, I know while you are doing the research. So the
Yes.
hand is there, is it you are using something called as a smart skin, something else like that?
I'm not able to get you, sir. Can you ask me one more time, sir?
No, smart skin,
No,
development
sir.
of.
No.
Yeah.
No, actually, the glove that the main initially when I started developing, I was having this point of commercialization. So I don't wanted to go for a new something that's very new, altogether new technology such as smart skin. So what I did was I just went for a previous stretchable fabric, and this glove that was designed was, if you see, it was fabricated for a specific participant. So the hand dimensions, just like how cloth is stitched, the hand dimension of a specific to participants were taken, and it was given to a tailor. And the tailor, actually, I trained the tailor for almost 6 months. So I worked with her for 6 months to stitch the glove, because the glove is circuit inside the glove is sewed using conductive thread and fabric. So that the normal sewing machine can do that, but with appropriate speed and practice, it has to be done. So I sat with the tailor and I trained her for almost 6 months to do that, sir. So that's the manufacturing process of a glove. So like around 80 participants, I collected the experiment. I collected the data from for the experiments. I collected around 80 participants. So each participant had the unique gloves. So the circuit will be inside the glove, and you need to just place the art of the glove. That's the controller. Just place the control. So once the it comes out of the tailor shop, just make the continuity testing and all those. If prelim testing gets passed, you just move on, sir. So that's how the manufacturing process. So that's how it was done, and yeah, that's it, sir. And after that, I take this glove to next level. So I just added TTS module, so that converts text to speech module. So once that module is added, it gives me a speech output. So that's how next level, it went to next level.
Means hand anthropometry has been studied and it is a tailor made for the each individual.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
can be generalized after that.
Sir.
So it is a tailor made, no? The anthropometry of the hand is studied and it is made tailor made then.
Yes, sir. Anthropometry of the hand is actually we take the measurements. So we have asked the tailor, and initially tailor thought. So we actually took trial and error measurements. The glove did not come up well because the measurements that you take will be in the 2D. The actually glove is a 3D entity, right? So then you, because the thickness and the puffiness of the glove depends on various different factors. So anthropometry you take, after taking the anthropometry, you need to do some kind of an minute and important adjustments, so that the glove becomes snuggered. So if the glove is snuggered, only you can actually perform this or make the claims that you are making with these experiments. So that's the thing, sir. Yeah.